that first and foremost, if you would be able to elaborate the key data insights from the report and what they reveal about the travel trends during the Maha Kumbh 2025.
Sure. So, the Maha Kumbh was actually once in a lifetime sort of event for most Indians to attend this time around, given that this was the one that was occurring once in 144 years. And we saw amazing lift in searches and bookings across all our lines of businesses. And, I can share some data with you. Essentially, let's start maybe with bus, where it was most interesting. So on buses, because remember that flight and train in our country is slightly capacity constrained. So even though more flights were introduced to Prayagraj and more trains, special trains were run, but buses is where we saw capacity expansion because bus operators were quickly able to redeploy buses on this route in preference to others, and also they were able to essentially have more capacity planned to service all routes to Prayagraj, Lucknow, Varanasi, in the region. So we saw bus bookings to Prayagraj actually grew almost 20x YOY if we compare the same period, which was, from the time the Kumbh began to the time it ended, which was largely in, if you look at February as the peak time for that, that's where we saw the biggest peaks hit there, almost 20x. And if you look at who was booking this, right, the most surprising or stark insight for me was that Kumbh was not just a phenomena where you would have assumed that it would be the older or the millennials, 40 plus slash 50 plus would be in bulk. That's what people would assume. But on the bus side, at least, our data reveals that Gen Z was leading the charge there. And in terms of 20 to 25-year-old, they constituted almost 26% of our bookings. And if we look at less than 30 years old, then almost half of the bookings came from Indians who were less than 30 years old who were traveling to that region during the Kumbh. And if I look at, how in the last, like if I look at how bus bookings have also trended, like historically, I think Varanasi or Ayodhya had already started to see good rise the year prior. But if I compare the scale of Prayagraj, right, it's just on a different order of magnitude that we saw during this time. I mean, just to give you some very interesting stats, right, we saw people booking buses from as far away as Coimbatore or Vijayawada or Hyderabad. These could be like a 1.5, 2 day long trips, right? And people were willingly paying let's say 10,000 a seat, 14,000 a seat, 15,000 a seat to actually take those long journeys because trains were all full and flight fares were obviously where they were. So buses became a very, very important means to reach Prayagraj. Right. So I think that's where we saw, if I look at the origin cities that we saw most of these bus travelers come from, they were, Delhi, Hyderabad, Lucknow, Nagpur, Bangalore. So Bangalore to Prayagraj by bus became a very interesting access, which you wouldn't assume would be happening, but people were traveling on that long trip. Jaipur, Ranchi, and even from nearby, so obviously Ayodhya and Varanasi were the other access. But I think the other trend that we saw there was that Gen Z obviously had a 20-fold increase year on year, across our platform for UP. And it just shows that this was not just a phenomena for the older generation, but actually the younger generation. And a lot of them actually going there for that experience, for that unique experience, right? And perhaps some of them went there for their viral reels. But my guess is that there was a lot of faith and devotion, and we spoke to many people, right? I mean, I was there personally with family and got a chance to interact with people, and it was just amazing to see the level of faith and devotion that brought people from so far away. Sitting in a bus for a couple of days to reach that place, right? And I think the other interesting thing is solo travelers, even on the train side, right? Which is again an indication of younger population that was booking these trips. On the train side, solo travelers made almost 60% of the bookings during this period, right? Which is again a significant shift of travel behavior we saw during this time. Train bookings for Prayagraj surged almost 4x YOY. And if I look at again the top origin cities, they are similar to what we saw on buses, but some of them are slightly different. So Meerut, Kanpur, Delhi, Varanasi, Lucknow. So a lot of people would have come to these nearby access or I would say source cities, right, by other modes of transport, and then taken a train in or a bus into Prayagraj, right, from there. On flights, even though we saw a big lift, 5.4x lift YOY, if I look at the numbers. And nearby airports, in fact, also saw a massive lift, 69% growth for Lucknow and Varanasi airports. Because if you couldn't find a flight at a convenient time to Prayagraj because the airport was not functioning 24 hours a day. I mean, I think there was a very short period of time where they started allowing nighttime flights in the later phase of the Maha Kumbh, but in the early phase, it was largely a daytime airport that was operating. And I think there we saw nearby airports starting to pick up as a alternate to reaching there. And again, the top origin cities were Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Pune, Kolkata, Chennai, Goa, Bhubaneswar. I mean, the top airports from across the country obviously had the most volume because that's where the connectivity also was, either with a direct flight or just a one-hop flight. And I think uh, if I look at fares, right, so we had shared some stats also around then on the fares. Fares had escalated by almost 70 to 80% during the peak time, but they have come down and come off that peak now. So as we speak, they are again very similar to what they were in the days before the Kumbh Mela came in. And yeah, I think we are seeing now, like, I mean, if I look at a Delhi Prayagraj fair for end of February, when the Kumbh Mela was already over, in a 0 to 7 day advance purchase date, it was down to about 4,300 rupees. But the same fare during the first week of February was about 15,700, right? So you can see the kind of decrease now that is visible now that the peak is over. So I think broadly on Kumbh, that those were the stats we saw. I think the other thing we have noticed is that many people planned a trip not just to Prayagraj, but also did Varanasi, Ayodhya, that entire circuit, spiritual circuit, and especially people who are coming from places like Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, etc., right? They may not get to travel to that region that often. And many of them said, if we're coming here, let's do, all the nearby religious places. So we saw good lift.
In that similar context itself, so the faith-based tourism seems to be evolving very rapidly, sir. Do you
Mhm.
see this
Yeah.
especially after the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya was inaugurated? Earlier also, there were people were traveling for pilgrimages and everything, but now there's a lot of surge that we are able to see, sir. So do you see this as a major growth segment for the travel industry in the future as well, or at present? Maybe, yes.
No, absolutely. I mean, just to share a very interesting stat, which is more recent, right? Even during the holy break, right, which was just last week, we saw bookings for places like Ayodhya and Varanasi also rise, and we had shared some stats around that as well. But a 45 to 50% increase that we saw, YOY on bookings towards these religious places because it was a long weekend and people took off. Traditionally, a lot of Mathura Vrindavan usually is there in the mix around holy time for obvious reasons, but we saw that happen. And if I just go back to historical stats, like in Q3, we had shared some stats on other religious places. So if I look at Varanasi, Gaya, Shirdi, Puri, Haridwar, Vaishno Devi, for us, the bookings YOY as of last quarter, which is the last disclosed quarter for us, were growing between 100 and 150% YOY. So if you just look at the graphs for these religious places and you compare them to other destinations, I think we've seen spiritual tourism completely hit the ball out of the park, right? In that sense, like we've seen unprecedented growth And like we shared, the growth is being led by younger population, by Gen Z, by people under 30 years old, right? And that is the most interesting and new trend, because I think post-COVID, we've seen that Gen Z for sure has increased their frequency of travel, thanks to the YOLO phenomena, as we call it, which is people wanting to do, not keep the bucket list for later, but actually complete the bucket list sooner if they can. And I think many of these places, given the infrastructure is improved, given the government has gone in and built out the temple infra, the connectivity infra, the airports. Right? If you look at the airports in all the places I mentioned, right, they're as modern as the ones in Delhi or Bangalore, right? And I think that modernization of airports, railway stations, connectivity, road infra, the connectivity between, let's say, Delhi and most of these destinations by road has also improved significantly, right? So I think if you look at a sum total of all that, that's driving this kind of growth. And of course, a lot of capex is being spent by the government under the Darshan scheme and the other schemes, right, where the infra around these places being developed, not just in the spiritual tourism for these destinations I mentioned, but also in the Buddhist circuit, which was announced in the last budget, right? So Nalanda and places in Bihar that are being developed. We are very hopeful that it will start driving higher footfalls there as well. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, just to understand one thing, sir, when there's such a surge in the travelers and everything, so how is technology playing its role, helping the travel experiences with current surge in AI and predictive analytics,
Yeah.
especially, for the event-driven travel? Yes.
Absolutely. So, on that front, we were actually quite ahead of the curve, right? We had actually launched a dedicated website or portal for Kumbh Mela, right? It was a trip planner that was dedicated to pilgrims who wanted to visit the Kumbh. In fact, it's still live for posterity. I mean, if you want to go and check it, if you just search for Ixigo Maha Kumbh on any search engine, you will land on it. Basically, what we did was we aggregated all the important information that any visitor would need, right from places to visit, things to do, how to reach the important ghats, the auspicious dates, the tents around that could be booked, the hotels in the city that were still available, things to do. We had these curated. We even had influencers there who were essentially going out and recording in real time, sharing live feeds to us, right? So that tourists can get an idea of what it's like being there at that time or that day. And then many ideas on planning your trip. On top of this, we had our AI trip planner called Ixigo Plan, which again, you can chat with it to plan your own trip, create your own itinerary in and around Prayagraj, right? So we had all that, and then all the historical monuments, the places to where you can go and have local food, and how to reach Prayagraj from various places in India through multimodal connectivity. So this portal was, quite successful. We had lakhs of visitors in terms of footfall during this period, and I think we've managed to help quite a few pilgrims out there with this content and information. Yeah.
Okay. So like you have said that, there's been government is spending a lot of on the infrastructure development like roads and railways and transport, airlines and everything. So now with this, the people are also increasing. The travelers are also increasing as the infrastructure is developing is going better. So how does
Yeah.
Ixigo plan to scale its multimodal travel services to meet, future surges in demand?
Yeah. So I think in that sense, we are actually very well positioned, right? Because we built this company around the thesis that the next wave of growth in travel will come from tier 2, 3, 4 towns, from the aspiring middle class of the country, people who may still not be traveling on a flight yet, right? And so if you look at, our entire journey of building Ixigo, it's been built around saying whatever the aspiring middle class wants across tier 2, 3, 4, and even in tier 1, right? We will provide that, whether it is utility, whether it's information, or whether it is bookings or transactions. I mean, as per me, bookings or transactions are a very small part of the entire travel experience, because you start by wanting to plan a trip, and then you're sort of researching, planning. There's this booking phase, but then there's a post-booking phase, which is also very important. While you're on the trip, can someone handhold you with the right information in a preemptive manner? And if you look at Ixigo's apps, right, whether it's our train app or our flight app or even our bus booking app, AbhiBus, right, we've built them with utility as well as transactions in mind, right? So it's built with the focus of saying, how do we help travelers? How do we handhold them across all these phases of a journey, right? And each phase has its own set of tools or products that actually are built for helping those travelers. Just to give you a small example of a product that we launched recently, which was very useful during the Kumbh as well. It's called Travel Guarantee. Now, what Travel Guarantee does is that, if you're booking a train ticket and it's a waitlisted ticket with a very high probability of waitlist and waitlist conversion to confirmed seat, because we also had a PNR prediction engine that we launched many years ago. Now, imagine that you had a 95, 96% probability of actually confirming, but it does not confirm on the last day because just that nobody cancels. Now, typically what happens is the fares would go up, seats would start running out everywhere else as well. And even on buses, the fares would run up. So flights and buses become more expensive, even if you book last minute, and then you're left in a lurch because you might get the refund back for the train. But then what do you do if you don't have a confirmed seat? So we built this product which almost sort of guarantees you being able to travel on that route, because it gives you up to a 3x refund if your waitlisted ticket does not confirm. And you can use that money to actually book a bus or a flight instead. You get up to 2x if you want to book another train, because even on train, the Tatkal bookings are slightly more expensive. So in a way, we're trying to help travelers saying, okay, if you wanted to go from A to B and you did not have a confirmed seat, can we come in and build one layer on top which says, okay, we'll try our best to get you a confirmed seat on at least one mode of transport across the multimodal spectrum where we operate, right? So in that sense, I think it's a very different approach than saying, we just want to sell more tickets, right? Here we are saying we want to help travelers by actually giving them 3 times the money if for any reason they do not confirm. Of course, we charge a small fee for that product, but essentially the idea is, can we build predictable travel experiences? Can we reduce the downside risk? Can we reduce the anxiety, right? And Ixigo Assured is another such product which we launched many years ago, where in case you decide to cancel for any reason because plans change, and things may go wrong and you want to cancel and get all your money back, we allow you to press the cancel button and get your money back within minutes. And I think that's the kind of experience that we brought in, ahead of many other companies in this space.
Okay. So my final question would be for the Ixigo as to looking ahead, what is your vision for Ixigo in the next 5 years? And what key milestones can we expect in terms of growth and market positioning? And also, if there are any new product offerings that you have lined up for the customers for Ixigo. Yes.
Sure. So if you look at the part of the market where we are strong and dominant in, which is train and bus users and people emerging from this next billion user category and starting to book flights, starting to take their first international trip, I think the fortunate part for us is that because we've spent a decade understanding these customers and having enough empathy to build the right products for them, we are seeing now the growth come in other verticals, whether it's buses where we grew 63% YOY last quarter, or flights where we grew 73% YOY last quarter in GTV terms. These verticals have started to see the impact of the large user base that we built of about 87 million monthly active users, and growing nicely. So I just saw a report this morning from the Citigroup, which basically talked about how a couple of our apps are actually the fastest growing apps on the internet right now in India. And I think the exciting part is that this is still an underserved market. This is still a market that is less understood by most existing online players. This is a market where the dominant behavior is still to book offline or just land there and then figure things out. And I think therefore the opportunity is massive, right? So you look at buses, only 20-21% of bus bookings happen online. If you look at hotels, again, it's in the 20s. The kind of penetration that we are seeing in our side of the market is even lower, right? And I think in that sense, the opportunity is to just be consistent in offering the best customer experience to our users by understanding those users better, by building the right products and services for them, and also serving them with a sense of offering utility information, hand holding, and not just trying to sell things to them, right? I mean, the idea, and if you look at how Ixigo built the company over the last decade, we've always been very obsessed about customer experience and being able to solve problems which are non-transactional, but which help reduce the friction while people are traveling. So we'll continue doing that. And the next 5 years, I mean, at least the way I look at it, the opportunity for us is to be the fastest growing online travel company, which we already are, and maintaining that, and then figuring out new avenues for growth. For example, we launched food delivery on trains last quarter when we acquired Zoop. So there are many other such avenues where we can serve this user and have a larger share of the wallet by actually solving a real problem that those users face along the journey or before, during, and after the trip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alok, for speaking to PTI today. It was a pleasure talking to
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you, sir.